Snow fell thick and silent over the St. Lawrence Valley in December 1647, as French settlers in Quebec City prepared for midnight mass and Réveillon feasts. Candles flickered in windows. Carols and the Huron Christmas hymn, Jesus Ahatonia, wove European tradition into New World realities. For French Catholics, Christmas was the emotional and spiritual center of winter. Far to the south in Puritan New England, whose religious culture would strongly influence parts of what became British Canada, December 25th was just another working day. Shops stayed open, children went to lessons, men labored as usual. For Puritans and strict Presbyterians, Christmas was a popish festival, tainted by pagan roots and rowdy European customs of misrule. From the mid-1600s to the early 1800s, these two visions of Christmas, warm, ritualized celebration and stern, suspicious rejection, coexisted uneasily across the territories that later formed Canada. In some regions, Christmas was cherished. In others, it was shunned or quietly suppressed. The holiday became a fault line, revealing deeper tensions about religion, identity, and who would shape the character of a new society. French Catholic New France and Acadia folded Christmas into their identity. Midnight mass, processions, feasts, and carols symbolized continuity and community. Meanwhile, English Puritans and Scottish Presbyterians, scarred by memories of drunken revelry and social inversion in Old World Christmases, saw the holiday as a dangerous intrusion into pure, Bible-based religion. Their influence, imported to Atlantic and later inland settlements, meant that in much of early British North America, Christmas was viewed with suspicion, discouraged socially, or treated as entirely ordinary. Canada, from the beginning, was a patchwork. French Catholics, British Anglicans, Scots Presbyterians, Irish Catholics, Indigenous nations, Germans, and others. This diversity made Christmas a contested space, a story not of a gentle evolution, but of conflict, resistance, and eventual compromise. For many settlers, the discovery that Christmas was not to be celebrated came as a shock. Children of strict Presbyterians in Nova Scotia or Upper Canada learned that December 25th was no special day. Work continued, schools remained open, and any longing for festivity was met with warnings about superstition and Romish error. New England planters who settled Nova Scotia in the 1760s brought a deeply ingrained anti-Christmas culture. They had lived under Massachusetts laws that once fined people for keeping Christmas. In their new communities, December 25th was just another working day. Even as nearby Acadians lit candles, attended midnight mass, and feasted in defiant continuity with their pre-expulsion past. The contrast could be painful. Protestant children smelled rich cooking and heard carols from Catholic neighbors' homes, while being told that God did not wish them to celebrate. Diaries and letters from the era hint at confusion and envy. Protestants felt duty-bound to reject what clearly gave others genuine joy. In Upper Canada, Loyalists and later immigrants often faced practical obstacles rather than formal bans. Few churches, scattered communities, and harsh winters made organized observances difficult. Even those inclined to mark Christmas sometimes found themselves isolated, reading scripture at home instead of attending any special service. Scottish Presbyterians, shaped by a kirk that officially banned Christmas for centuries, treated December 25th with conscious indifference or active hostility. Extra work on that date was a point of pride. Children who heard stories of talking animals or magic associated with Christmas from Catholic friends were harshly corrected, learning that even curiosity about the holiday could invite rebuke. In French Catholic Lower Canada, the discovery ran in the opposite direction. As British rule expanded, French Canadians realized their beloved Christmas customs were viewed with suspicion by Protestant authorities. The Quebec Act of 1774 protected Catholic worship, but social disdain lingered. In response, many French Canadians embraced Christmas even more fiercely, as an act of cultural and religious resistance. Réveillon, carols, and midnight mass became not just spiritual observances, but declarations. We are still here. Across early Canada, people slowly realized that Christmas was not a neutral, harmless family festival. It had become a marker of allegiance and identity. To celebrate or refuse to celebrate was to reveal where one stood in a larger struggle over whose vision of faith and society would prevail. The confrontation over Christmas unfolded on multiple fronts. In pulpits and pamphlets, Presbyterian and Puritan-leaning ministers denounced the holiday as unbiblical and contaminated by paganism and past excesses. They argued that Scripture commands remembrance of Christ's death, not his birth, and warned that festivals often slide into gluttony and frivolity. Catholic priests and many Anglicans replied that the Incarnation itself called for joy. Angels sang at Christ's birth. The Church had long marked the feast as a central mystery. They acknowledged abuses but insisted the solution was not to abolish celebration but to purify it. To ignore Christmas altogether, they argued, risked portraying God as opposed to human joy. Anglican clergy tried to steer a middle course, maintaining Christmas services but often with restrained ceremony, conscious of more radical Protestants watching suspiciously. Their congregations reflected this ambiguity. Some embraced the chance for special worship, others treated it as mild deviation from stricter practice. Socially, conflicts played out in daily life. In mixed communities, Catholic families closing shops and feasting on December 25th stood in sharp contrast to Protestant neighbors who worked as usual and shamed those who relaxed. In lumber camps and rural settlements, Catholic workers demanding the day off clashed with Protestant employers who saw Christmas as an illegitimate interruption of labor. Town councils debated whether to keep public offices and shops open. School boards argued over closing schools. Teachers in mixed areas often faced half-empty classrooms on Christmas Day, with Catholic children absent and Protestant children resentful. It became clear that keeping the day ordinary was as disruptive as closing entirely. Inside families, especially in mixed marriages, the question could be heartbreaking. Anglican or Catholic spouses might long to mark Christmas quietly, while Presbyterian partners forbade any observance. Some managed uneasy compromises: modest meals, no decorations, holiday charity framed carefully as generic winter relief, not tied explicitly to the feast. Class also shaped confrontation. Wealthier families could celebrate discreetly behind curtained windows, insulated from social consequences. Working-class Catholics and moderate Protestants, dependent on employers' goodwill, risked wages or jobs if they refused to work on December 25th. In such cases, the price of keeping Christmas was literally measurable in lost income. After the rebellions of 1837-38, tensions sharpened. French-Canadian Catholic gatherings at Christmas were sometimes viewed by British authorities as potential hubs of sedition. Conversely, the refusal of some Protestants to acknowledge Christmas reinforced French-Canadian sense that their culture was under siege. The holiday became an arena where political and cultural grievances intersected with religious conviction. By the mid-19th century, Canada's Christmas landscape was deeply fractured. Joyful churches and silent chapels, feasting homes and ordinary workdays, secret trees and publicly shuttered celebrations. The war over the holiday was far from settled, but pressures were building that would push the country toward resolution. Beneath doctrines and policies lay the quieter, deeper terrain of feeling. The effort to suppress or minimize Christmas left emotional scars and unexpected adaptations. In strict communities, some took pride in rejecting the holiday. Treating December 25th as ordinary proved one's seriousness. Yet the human need for festivity remained. Among Scots, for example, New Year's, Hogmanay, grew into a major celebration, complete with visiting, special foods, and small gifts. Much of what might have clustered around Christmas simply migrated to another date deemed safer. Children often bore the brunt of the contradiction. They heard tales of Christmas from elders or Catholic playmates, glimpsed other families' joy, and felt instinctively that something was missing. Many later recalled childhood Decembers marked by a sense of deprivation
that went beyond material poverty. They sensed that an entire emotional landscape of anticipation, wonder, and communal happiness had been declared off-limits. For French Canadians and Acadians, Christmas took on added emotional weight as a symbol of survival. After expulsions and political defeats, to gather at Réveillon and sing old carols was to proclaim continuity. The holiday fused with identity. To abandon it would feel like surrendering part of themselves. Moderate Protestants and Anglicans often occupied a psychological middle ground, wanting some warmth and ritual, yet feeling guilty for embracing too much. As a result, Christmas in their homes could feel half apologized, a slightly better meal, perhaps a hymn or two, but always under the watchful eye of conscience. Their children sensed that joy was permitted only in carefully measured doses. Immigrants from strongly Christmas-keeping regions, notably Germans, felt dislocated when their beloved customs were unwelcome or suspect. Some lit trees in secret, curtains drawn. Others eventually gave up traditional decorations with lingering sadness. For them, suppressing Christmas meant losing a tangible link to homeland and family memory. In hard times, crop failures, epidemics, isolation, the absence of shared celebration could deepen loneliness. Where Christmas was allowed, its rituals often provided consolation and solidarity. Where it was discouraged, winter hardship remained unsoftened by any communal midpoint of light and song. Over decades, this emotional undercurrent eroded resistance. People might intellectually assent to arguments against Christmas, yet still feel an ache when December came. Parents who had grown up without the holiday found themselves reluctant to deny all joy to their own children. Ministers mellowed. Once sharp lines blurred. Hearts began to lean toward celebration before laws or official decisions did. The eventual decision to embrace Christmas in Canada emerged from many converging currents rather than a single turning point. Victorian culture exerted enormous influence. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol recast the holiday as a time of charity, family reconciliation, and moral renewal. Its message resonated across denominational lines and offered a form of Christmas compatible with Protestant concerns, warm, morally serious, and focused on generosity rather than ritual excess. At the same time, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert popularized the decorated Christmas tree. Engravings of the royal family around a candle-lit fir made the practice fashionable and respectable among English-speaking Canadians. Customs once dismissed as German or papist began to look thoroughly British and therefore acceptable. Immigration reshaped cities and towns. Irish, German, Scandinavian, and Eastern European settlers brought robust Christmas traditions. As their numbers grew, it became harder for a single theological stance to dictate custom. Meanwhile, merchants discovered that selling gifts and festive goods was good business. Railways and newspapers leaned into the season for profit. Economic incentives started to favor a shared holiday rhythm. Within churches, quiet experiments began. Some Presbyterian congregations introduced special services near Christmas, framed as seasonal recognitions rather than holy days. Anglican and Catholic churches expanded their public observances. Over time, these practices normalized the idea that the incarnation might be marked in a distinct yearly way. In homes, changes often came in small, private steps, granting children the day off from chores, preparing a modest, special meal, slipping a coin or orange into a stocking, hanging a discreet sprig of greenery. Once such gestures were made, they tended to grow from year to year. What began as exception became tradition. Industrialization and Confederation added practical pressure. As factories, offices, and railways imposed regular work schedules, there was growing need for common days of rest. After 1867, the new Dominion of Canada began formalizing general holidays. By 1871, Parliament recognized Christmas as one of them, alongside New Year's Day and Good Friday. The law did not instantly erase all theological objections, but it signaled a decisive cultural turn. Canadians of many backgrounds could now close shops, suspend schools, and gather without defying civic expectations. Younger generations grew up assuming Christmas was both normal and nationally acknowledged. By the early 20th century, a distinctively Canadian Christmas had taken shape. A blend of Catholic midnight masses and Protestant morning services, French Réveillon and English turkey dinners, German trees and British carols, indigenous winter traditions, and newer American influences like Santa Claus imagery. The old fight over whether Christmas should exist at all gave way to more familiar questions about how it should be celebrated. Today, lights in Toronto condos, candles in Quebec farmhouses, and communal feasts in prairie towns can make it seem as if Christmas has always been a natural part of Canadian life. The history of its suppression and gradual acceptance reveals a more complicated truth. First, it shows that beloved traditions are neither timeless nor inevitable. They survive because people choose them, defend them, adapt them, and sometimes recover them after periods of loss. The decorated tree, the midnight hymn, the day off work were all once contested innovations on this soil. Second, it illustrates the limits of ruling emotion by decree. For generations, some authorities tried to ban or belittle Christmas in the name of doctrinal purity. Yet human longing for light, rest, and shared joy in the dead of winter persisted. When denied one outlet, it sought another. Efforts to erase Christmas never fully succeeded because they ran against deep human rhythms. Third, Canada's experience highlights the power of compromise. No single group won the old Christmas wars. Instead, a new, plural holiday emerged, allowing different forms of observance to coexist. Solemn liturgies and secular parties, turkey and tourtière, Santa parades, and quiet evenings at home. This blended, flexible Christmas looks very much like Canada itself. Imperfect, negotiated, layered with multiple histories. Fourth, knowing this past can bring humility to today's debates about public religion, inclusivity, and commercialism. Arguments about how or whether institutions should acknowledge Christmas are not new. They are the latest chapter in a centuries-long negotiation over meaning, identity, and shared space. Finally, the journey from forbidden feast to shared celebration offers a gentle warning about joy. Some of the sternest opponents of Christmas were sincere in wanting to honor God, yet their approach often left little room for delight. Over time, many of their descendants came to see that faith need not fear festivity, that wonder, beauty, and generosity can express gratitude as powerfully as austerity.
When Canadians today choose how to mark December, whether in church or around a crowded table, at a community dinner, a concert, or simply with a quiet day off, they stand at the far end of a long arc of conflict and change. The cold shadow that once lay over winter's light has thinned, not because history disappeared, but because generations of people in many small and stubborn ways chose to light candles anyway. The greatest legacy of that struggle may be this: not a single enforced way to celebrate, but the hard-won freedom to bring one's own story, memories, and beliefs to the dark of December, and, together or apart, to make of them whatever light one can.